Hello everybody, it's your boy, and today we're going to respond to an article which is all about Dan Harmon responding to the criticism of his new female writers. Now, as some of you know, my first video on this new channel was a review of episodes 2 to 5 of Rick and Morty's season 3 and how they're all shit. Now, apart from season 5, the others were entirely written by these new staff writers, and they were amongst the worst. And these episodes were, on the whole, not well received by most Rick and Morty fans. So you could just go on the Reddit page and see how people are constantly writing about how it's the worst season yet. How, apart from episode 1, at the time at least, that this is the worst stretch of episodes they've seen. Now, after episode 5's just questionable things that they did in it, I'm not going to spoil it. Episode 6 and 7 were pretty good. I've not seen 8 and 9 yet, so I will reserve judgment on them. One of those 2 episodes was apparently questionable at the very least. But on the whole, this whole season has seen a remarkable decrease in the amount of laughs and funny moments. Just general quality has just gone down. Now, I don't know if that's just a season slump and then season 4 will be great again and maybe these other writers will improve, but I don't know. But let's get into the article, shall we? And this is from Entertainment Weekly, and it says here, many Rick and Morty fans already know the brilliant Adult Swim animated comedy shook up its writer's room boys club for the current 3rd season. I hate that phrase. I hate it. Boys club. As if that's a bad thing, that a group of people who are doing a project is bad because it's entirely male. Nobody cares if it's entirely female. I mean, look at the Huffington Post. That's an old girls' club, but no one batters an eyelid. But as soon as it's just a group of lads doing something that they love, apparently that's bad and that needs to change. And thus it did, because of backlash like that. But let's continue. We've barely even started. And now have a gender-balanced writing staff. But while this summer's episodes have received the usual raves from critics and most fans, I would hesitate to say most fans, there has been some ugly online backlash against the show's newest team members. The 2nd and 3rd episodes of the season, the Mad Max trope-busting spoof Rick Mansing the Stone and the gleefully bonkers Pickle Rick, were credited to 2 of the show's female writers, who were then harassed on Twitter and even had their personal information put online, aka doxed. Now, I would like to see some evidence that they were doxed. Why the hell would they be doxed for this? There's no link to a article or some kind of story which shows this to be the case, or a Twitter post by one of the 2 writers saying, yes, we were doxed. Why would they be doxed by this? What is the rationale behind this? I guess they're trying to say that a certain percentage of Rick and Morty fans are misogynists, therefore they would dox a group of writers for no reason than writing terrible comedy, which I really hesitate to believe. Usually, we don't see people get doxed for things like this. It's usually over other things. This, I really don't see. As somebody who's seen a lot of doxings on the internet, I don't usually see this happening. And of course, they're saying they're being harassed on Twitter. Again, no link to any mention of harassment. There's no evidence. Just, they said it, therefore it must be so. Most likely, as we all know from people like this, because we know especially Jessica Gao, who is an ideologue, it could well be lying and just conflating harassment with criticism. I believe most likely these messages will be criticism with a minority genuinely trying to harass them, as is usually the case. We spoke to executive producer Dan Harmon, who created the show, along with Justin Roiland, about what went down. Yes, that's such a unbiased, totally objective view on what's been going down, right? Dan, let's kill all the Nazis, Harmon, right? Basically, he wants to kill all the Trump and Republican supporters. That's really what he wants. I'm on a Twitter sabbatical, so the last thing I saw about this was a Reddit thread detailing the harassment. And we have a link. But again, there's no link to any evidence of harassment. There is a quote in that post, but it's just from one of the storyboard writers. And I've seen the tweets they sent to the female writer. But again, they're not showing it us. You've got room for screenshots, Harmon, and Entertainment Weekly. Show us. I was familiar going into the 3rd season, having talked to Felicia Day, that any high-profile women get doxed. They get harassed. They get threatened. They get slandered. Yeah, high-profile people who get involved in controversies get doxed, or get involved with a particular group of nasty individuals online who like to dox for the hell of it. But Felicia Day is not the type of person who I would be going over to and seeking advice over, because she's biased and she has her own agenda when it comes to things like this. And again, these women aren't actually high profile. They have very little in terms of credentials when it comes to TV land. Most of them barely started writing until recently. Why the hell doctors would go after them, I don't know. And again, I'm struggling to believe the case here. I mean, what exactly was doxed? Won't we have heard of this in our circles? Won't we have seen it being circulated? I don't see it. And besides, were they doxed, or was readily available information about them that they put on the internet simply been circulated amongst other people? You know, things that writers, actors, producers, etc. need to put out there in public for potential employers. I'm just speculating here. If they were doxed, then that's horrible. But again, writing bad comedy, that seems like low down on the list for being doxed. I've seen some terrible doxers in my lifetime, and they don't tend to dox even for that. I've not seen a single one of them do that. And besides, it's interesting how it's just the women. It's as if men like Saga on the Vakad, who has actually been doxed. Even people who I don't like Ralph Retort, was doxed by the very people he now associates with. Men get harassed too. Men get slandered too. Saga gets slandered on a daily basis. Far more than a group of writers whose main job is to be behind the scenes. And part of it is a testosterone-based subculture patting themselves on the back for trolling these women. Oh yeah, of course, a group of anonymous people who dox is apparently testosterone-based, because you can totally tell what gender a person is by their avatar or whatever they have. Of course it's the men who's doing it, Harmon. Of course it's totally not women who dox. I mean, it's not like Clementine Ford and other people have not doxed before, or Zoe Quinn. Because to the extent that you can get a girl to shriek about a frog, you've proven girls are girly, and there's no crime in assaulting her with a frog, because it's all in the name of proving something. I think it's all disgusting. This is the most bizarre thing I've ever read. Does he mean Pepe? So were they sending her Pepe memes? Look at this. Assaulting her with a frog. Is he on drugs? What? How does he even know what their motivations are? This guy's literally just as speculating as I am. Honestly, I think I'll just move on, because I really genuinely don't have much to say other than he has no idea who committed this. He has no idea if it's men or women who did it, but because he's an SJW, it's obviously the men who did it. So let's just move on. These knobs want to protect the content they think they own, and somehow combine that with their need to be proud of something they have, which is often only their race or gender. Which is kind of funny, because on the same side as him, we have feminists constantly bleating on about how proud they are to be women. We have black supremacists and Asians and other people who are hardline leftists going on about how proud they are to be black and Asian and how bad it is to be white. It's offensive to me, as someone who was born male and white and still works way harder than them, that there's some white male fan out there trying to further some creepy agenda by protecting my work. 1, you don't know if they're white or male. 2, I don't care if you're white and male. And 3, why is it creepy to want to basically criticise you because they love your product? Criticising your hiring methods, which, let's be honest, you didn't hire them because they were good. A cursory glance on IMDb, as I mentioned before, shows that most of them don't have much writing credits at all. One of them did actually write a couple for a show, which isn't very big, and actually did okay on the IMDb score, got a 6.9. That's pretty good. That's not far off from a 7 or an 8. But other than that, the quality of the writing is amongst the worst that I've ever seen produced on Rick and Morty. They were the ones who did some of the worst episodes. You're getting criticised for the quality and for the fact that you've chosen to promote these people to writing when there's probably other women who write comedy with much more experience and comedic timing and comedic skill than they do. Apparently it's protecting the show that they think they own. I think that's a straw man. They don't think they own it. It's just criticism. And it's pretty clear you can't handle that because your ego is too big. And I don't care if you work really hard. You do work pretty hard. It's pretty clear from your career that you've worked hard to get to where you need to work. But look at these women. They didn't do anything to deserve to write on such a show like this. And that's by their credentials, not because they're women. It seems like you're trying to project something onto these people and you have no idea what their lives are like, how they work, what they work as. And the chances are they've probably worked harder than you have in your entire life. So don't start calling these people lazy nerds. He's just not called them nerds yet, but it's essentially what he's critiquing. He's critiquing nerd culture. He's saying it's just the misogynistic nerds that are just attacking my female writers that I employed because they were women, because we needed to have a gender balanced crew because we got criticised for it. We had too many men. even though we were writing some of the best comedy ever made, but, whatever. I've made no bones about the fact that I loathe these people. It fucking sucks. And the only thing I can say is, if you're lucky enough to make a show that is really good that people like, that means some bad people are going to like it too. You can't just insist that everybody who watches your show get their head on straight. And I'm speaking for myself. I don't want the show to have a political stance. But at the same time, individually, these harassers aren't politicians and don't represent politics. They represent some shit that I probably believed when I was 15. Oh, really now? In many ways, you still believe it. It's just the arse backwards version of it. But the thing is, he's now admitting that he hates a certain section of his own fan base and nerd culture at large, who just so happen to be most of the culture, be it male or female. This just reminds me of the stuff they used to say about Gamergate and gamers. And they continue to say that shit even today. He just seems to be tooting his own horn, saying that he's better than them because he works hard to put on a good show for them, even though the quality has deteriorated despite the fact they had 2 years, I think, to work on this. And it shows. It shows the level of quality that has diminished. And it's just saddening to see that he really is one of those types that hates his own fan base. Just like in video games. And if any fan has a problem with any individual episode of Rick and Morty, or any scripted series of the writer's room for that matter, Harmon pointed out that it's unfair to single out the credited writer, particularly if that writer is not the showrunner. So what? If they wrote something that's bad, if the writing is bad, then they should be criticised. Criticising a director for bad writing is nonsensical unless that director actually had an input in the writing. Like, you would criticise Quentin Tarantino for the writing because he writes his own films. But why would I criticise Dan Harmon for writing an episode that's shit if he didn't write it? I can criticise him for hiring said writer, but I can't criticise him for the writing. It's total ignorance of how writing a television show works, Harmon adds. It's frustrating enough, having run Community for several years, to see threads like, oh well, it makes sense this episode written by Andy Burbrow because when Hillary Winston wrote her episode, she tends to linger more on dialogue and Andy's better at I want to hold you moments. And I want to scream at my computer, you idiots, we all write the show together. No, you don't. The credits speak for themselves. Like, you might have input, but ultimately, all these writers who are credited wrote the script. Yes, I know that Roylands likes to ad-lib a lot of dialogue that gets included in a lot of the episodes. Less so in this season, by the way. But overall, it's mostly scripted. And they have to take the fall because they wrote the script. This isn't like sports. This isn't football or rugby where the manager will take the blame for the team, even if necessarily it's not his fault the players underperformed. If you can tell the difference between one writer and another on a show I'm running, I've probably gotten so lazy that it hasn't all been blended and refined in the usual process. You will never be able to make it look like a uniform thing. Writers are individuals, and their individual flourishes just reflect on the viewer. You can't help that. No episode is the same if different writers are writing different episodes. It's just the way it is. You'd have to write it all on your own for that to be the case. The reason one person's name goes on an episode is that someone has to, and everyone deserves one of those times, at bat where they have to do all the grunt work. They ought to do the outlining. Sometimes if they're willing to, they can expand into the post-production process. There's a bunch of reasons why we don't accurately reflect how many writers contribute to each episode in the credits. Or to put it another way, shitty meme. Well, see, that's funny, because Monty Python had no issue just saying this episode was written by all the members of Monty Python with their names listed. Why can't you do the same thing? It's not hard. Come on, really? That just seems like the most empty excuse I've ever seen. Oh, we can't do it because somebody has to be put there. So you just randomly pick somebody's name out and then put it there when it's a team effort. Put it as the whole team. You seem to have no problem in one of the recent episodes putting 4 writers' names on, which to the average viewer suggests that 4 people wrote it. If 4 people didn't write it and it's everybody, you can't complain when the viewer doesn't know that. You're just attacking them for something that they don't know, as if you're expecting them to know. It's not hard to put everybody's name in the credits sequence. That suggests you're either lazy or you're a liar. But you know what? I could go on, but I think we should end it here, people. I'm running out of time. So until next time, I'll see you all later.